The bold claims made for the reliability and validity of the statistic for general intelligence, G, have been, and in some ways remain, very controversial. This presentation looks at some of the philosophical critiques of the approach. It also considers the political and ideological assumptions that are made by advocates of little g. In the 1930s, the mathematician and philosopher A.N. Whitehead emphasized the importance of not treating abstract or statistical concepts as if they had any equivalence in the physical world of objects and reality. He called this assumption the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Some would argue that we have already seen one example of misplaced concreteness already, when we assume that genes control characteristics in any direct way. Social scientists often refer to the concept of misplaced concreteness as reification. There are a number of philosophers and social scientists who consider that the measurable notion of intelligence to be a myth. There are a number of reasons for this. The data used are usually correlational, and it is inappropriate to deduce causality from correlations without additional evidence. The approach taken is extremely reductionist, in that a person's life chances can be reduced to a single statistic obtained in a series of tests at a particular moment in time. There is little, if any, independent experimental verification for the conclusions drawn through these approaches. Extreme care is needed when trying to turn the results of such tests into social policies and social interventions that can impact on the lives of ordinary people. Another argument is that it has significant potential for differences in ideological interpretation, which can be dangerous. There have been many examples of abuses of power which have resulted from such thinking. The results of scores for individual participants have to be standardized and normalized before they can be applied. There is concern about the lack of diversity in the participants that are used in the standardization processes, and this can lead to inherent cultural or racial biases. Although the results of such studies do not have an inherent ideological basis to them, the way in which the results can be interpreted often falls along established ideological patterns. The debate focuses on the extent to which the scores of individuals, rather than the statistics of populations, can be used as the basis of forming educational policy. For example, whether average differences in scores between ethnic groups can be used as a driver of racial policies. Whether using a reductionist score in order to be able to identify or label people is appropriate. And the social consequences of using such tools for selection in education remains an important debate in contemporary education. Selection can either be at the level of choosing schools or at the level of setting within a year group. The controversial nature of the subject was well illustrated by the range of ideological responses to the allegations that one of the most renowned educational geneticists had committed serious academic fraud. This was the story of Cyril Burt, who was active from about 1944 until 1966. Burt was instrumental in the formation of the English educational policy of selection at 11 for grammar schools. Burt died in 1971. Subsequently, he was accused of academic fraud by Leon Camin, and the story was picked up by a Sunday Times journalist, Dr. Oliver Gilley. The story broke in the 1980s. The controversy was a considerable setback for those who wanted to study the genetics of intelligence, and this is well documented in the literature. Recent research has suggested that, although Burt may well have committed academic fraud by fabricating the existence of research assistants, the essence of his data and the validity of his conclusions may well be correct. That is to say, recent contemporary genetics research has supported his original findings.